Katie Chambers, welcome to the Apollo Papyrus podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure, yeah. So I am an editor. I edit fiction and nonfiction books for indie authors. I've edited nearly 300 now, and I've been doing it for 9 years. Previously, I was an English teacher, but I don't know how English teachers can be English teachers and be moms at the same time. There's no energy left for your kids because you're teaching or grading papers all the time. So I had to find something I could do and still be present for my little ones.
You founded Beacon Point Services, which provides book editing and content writing services. What exact services does Beacon Point provide?
Okay, yes. So we edit nonfiction and fiction books. We do developmental level editing, copy editing, and proofreading. I have a whole team of editors. So if I'm full, I have other people that can take on the work, but I'm as the head editor, I check all their work. Then I also train other editors how to do the admin side of their business. So I discovered I had no clue. I don't have a business degree. I had no clue that I would love business so much. I was an English teacher, but prior there wasn't business aspect, but now I discovered I really loved the business side. So I actually teach other editors through, I have courses and webinars and presentations on everything admin, all the admin behind the scenes stuff, because a lot of editors, they're not so good at that part. They're good at editing, but they're not so good at the management of a business. So I teach them that. And then I have a whole resource center on my website for editors. Then I also have a whole resource center for authors and writers. I teach resume writing, I teach academic writing on that resource center, and then I teach book writing. So
You mentioned that you have some fellow editors that you work with at Beacon Point. Who are some of the other people at Beacon Point that you work with?
so I have a team. I have oh well, I mean their names aren't. I mean, I can tell you their names, but I've got Sarah and Marcia and Mary and Robin, and these are just a team. Some of them do the proofreading because I don't do proofreading at all. And so after I'm done, after either I or my team are done with the editing, they can then do the proofreading. And then some are editors and do the same kind of editing I do. But, I got a lot of inquiries and I was getting full for a while. So this was a way to be able to take on more authors, help more authors with our style of editing who want our style. And then I have other editors that match me in style. So yeah.
You mentioned that you don't do proofreading. Do you do copy editing, line editing, or both?
So my copy editing includes line editing, and I also do developmental editing. So I do developmental editing and then I do copy editing. Some editors do not separate copy editing and line editing. Some do. I'm one that does not. So when I do copy editing, I'm doing with all words and sentence issues, whether it be grammar, punctuation, which is your standard straight copy editing, or whether it be word choice and sentence fluency, which is your kind of often called line editing. But it's just one whole service for me that's the word and sentence level issues. And then developmental editing would be your big picture issues. Proofreading, a lot of people get confused and they think they're looking for a proofreader when in fact they're looking for a copy editor or developmental editor. Proofreading cannot happen until the book has been professionally edited. Proofreading comes in at the last stage there after editing. So they will check for remaining errors after the editor has done their part. But yeah, it's just the remaining errors in both design and in editing.
You edit both fiction and nonfiction books, and there's some editors that specialize in one or the other, but you edit both types. Are there any differences regarding how you approach editing a fiction book versus a nonfiction book? And if so, what are some key differences in that regard?
Yes, there are a lot of differences. And yes, you're right that some editors do just do one. I don't edit necessarily every genre. I have my nonfiction genres that I specialize in, like business, self-help, and how-to. And then I have my fiction genres that I specialize in so that I niche down a little bit and I've gotten super trained on those specific genres. So I'm not just like, hey, I can edit anything because it's good to have someone who understands the genre you're working in. But I get bored doing just one or the other. I like to have variety because fiction and nonfiction works different parts of my brain, and I like having both parts of my brain working. Um, Nonfiction, when I'm doing the developmental editing of nonfiction, I'm looking at organization a lot of the time, redundancy. A lot of nonfiction authors tend to be redundant, or they don't explain their concept well enough. So I have to help them explain. I give suggestions of like, here's what's missing. Here's what your reader's not going to understand from this. So here's what I suggest you add. Here's the order these things should go in. Let's rearrange this text because right now you kind of jump from point A to point B to point C to back to point A. So we're going to rearrange that. Sometimes you have transitions. We're going to put that in. So it's kind of, your typical organization and content. When I'm doing fiction editing developmentally, I'm looking at characters and plot. So with characters, I'm looking for, so it's not so much the organization and that do your reader understand this content as much as is it engaging content? Is the plot complete? Are there plot holes? So as with nonfiction, it's like, is there content missing that the reader won't understand? And with fiction, it's did you leave things in your plot that were like not resolved or were contradictory or confusing? So they're kind of similar, but the difference is one is more technical and one is more creative. So the more technical is, hey, this concept is missing. You didn't fully explain it. And the creative is more, you got this creative story, but here's where there's some plot holes, or you've got this creative character that you created, but they're not consistent, or they don't come across clearly on the page, or you tell too much, and so the reader doesn't get to experience the character. So one's kind of more the creative side, one's kind of more the technical side, but they're both looking at that big picture when you're doing the developmental level. And then when you're doing the copy editing level, I mean, a comma goes in the same place, whether it's nonfiction or fiction. Fiction does have a little bit more leeway with rules, so you get to play around with rhythm and when to break grammar rules. So that's kind of fun to be like, I don't think I want to put a comma there because of stylistically XYZ. But for the most part, the copy editing thing is pretty much the same in fiction and nonfiction. But then when you get into line editing, which is part of my copy editing, it's very different because nonfiction with line editing, you're kind of focusing on is it too wordy? Like, did you use too many words and convoluted sentences? Let's streamline the sentence, let's simplify it. Whereas with fiction, it's looking at the rhythm and the beat of the sentences, which doesn't matter as much in nonfiction as it does with fiction.
How many books have you edited at Beacon Point?
I personally have edited, I don't know the exact number, but it's close to 300. It's like 280 something. I have it on a spreadsheet that I could pull up. And then my team, and I just brought my team on because I just became an agency. So my team has done about 15 for me, but they've done, their own books too. They are freelance editors on their own who have their own businesses. It's just I send them work sometimes. But like I said, I just started the agency, so they've only done about 15 for me, but yeah, 280 something. I'd have to pull up my spreadsheet to know the exact number.
Does Beacon Point provide editing services for independent authors, traditionally published authors, hybrid published authors, or a combination thereof?
Mostly for indie authors, although I have edited a few books that are trying to get agented right now, which I'm super excited for them because I feel like they have a really good shot. But typically it's been indie authors just because I don't work for a specific publishing house. Um, when you say hybrid, there is something called true hybrid publishing, and then there's still something that is still self-publishing but with assistance. So I do sometimes do work for self-publishing companies that help self-publishing authors publish, but they're not full on a publisher. Like, but they'll still, they kind of work as a project manager. For example, they'll take the indie author under their wing and they'll say, okay, I'm going to help find all the people for you to, I'm going to find an editor for you. I'm going to find a cover designer, and I'm going to manage your whole project from start to finish. And I'm going to be your kind of sounding board. Like, let's talk about the cover design together. Let's talk about the editing together. And so that kind of publishing system I work with, which sometimes gets confused with hybrid publishers, but hybrid publishers are actually publishers in that they take some of the royalty fees and they pay you like an upfront, but they do it in a hybrid method so that it's not a full-on publisher, meaning the author still has to foot some of the bill up front. Because that's the thing about traditional publishing, you don't pay at all. With hybrid, they pay still, so they are giving up some of their rights because they are paying, but they're not a full-on traditional publisher that has all the resources that a traditional publisher has. So that's kind of more your hybrid. And I haven't really done work for hybrids, although there are some hybrid publishers I love. I just haven't worked for them. But I do work with self-publishing assisted companies, and they're kind of like they assist them. They act kind of like a publisher, but they don't take royalty fees. The author still pays for everything. It's not. It's kind of hard to explain to people that might not understand all the jargon, but it's not full on in-house. It's just project managed from start to the end.
Beacon Point, your company, also offers content writing services. What types of content writing services does Beacon Point provide?
Yeah, so I write authors' biographies, and I've written book descriptions, like the blurbs on the back cover. And I used to do a whole lot more content writing before I had a lot of editing work, and now I mostly do editing. But I still occasionally have written resumes for people, cover letters, and website copy. I've written some website copy. I've written some blog copy, but I don't focus so much on that anymore. So mostly my content writing these days is author biographies and the blurb on the back of the book that my editing clients want me to do.
You mentioned this very early on in the interview. You give presentations, workshops, and webinars for editors and writers. What topics do you focus on in your presentations, workshops, and webinars?
Okay, so when I'm presenting to authors, I either present from the side of like working with an editor, what to expect in working with an editor, how to get the most out of your editor, or I'm actually teaching them writing craft. So I might, if it's fiction, I might be teaching them the principles of how to balance showing and telling, not show, don't tell, but how to balance showing and telling, or how to use action beats effectively, or how to use free and direct speech, or how to get good character interiority, or how to have deep narrative distance and play with the narrative distance. So those are like kind of craft tools I might teach them. With nonfiction, the craft tools I teach them is how to make the book more organized, more reader friendly. And then with editors, as I said, I teach them all things admin. So I teach them designing their website, marketing, good website copy, marketing, financial management, project management, client management. I just kind of train them, and I presented at a lot of author conferences and a lot of editor conferences on various topics.
There are some online courses on Beacon Point's website, and I'll include a link to Beacon Point's website in the text description of this episode. But how do the online courses that Beacon Point offers for editors and writers work?
Yes, so I do have a course page. Some of my presentations that I have given live, people have requested that I give them as webinars for their community. So I had an author community want me to give my Beauty of Beats and Free and Direct Speech presentation that I've given live. They wanted me to give it to their community, and then they gave me the recording, so I put it on my website. They can just go there. If they want the webinar, they just sign up for it, pay the $25, and they get access to the webinar. For editors, same thing. Some of my presentations that I've given at conferences, I've had editorial organizations request that I present a webinar to their community, and then they've given me the recording. And then my course, I have two courses. One is on resume writing, and I wrote that course before I even established Beacon Point. I helped people write their resumes. I've been doing that for years and years. And I was like, I should start teaching people. And I originally had it on Udemy. But now that I have Beacon Point, I have my own company, I now have it hosted on my company site. And then my other full-on course is running your editorial business like a pro. And that is literally teaching editors all things admin, every topic, whereas the webinars are just specific to like maybe client management or financial management or processes. And then my course is like all of it. So I do have two courses, and then I will continually grow my webinars because I have people ask me to present to their organizations, and then they just give me the recording. But yeah, to get it, you go to the courses and you just see what course you're interested in, and then you just click sign up. It asks you to pay, and then you're enrolled.
You mentioned very early on in the interview that you are a mother. How do you maintain a work life balance as a businesswoman with children?
Yes, so I have actually really young children. My oldest is 8, or no, excuse me, my oldest is 9, and my youngest is 3. So I'm still very much in the young stages. Um, so summer was hard. But I like I said, I wanted to still work. I have to work. I love working. But I knew I couldn't be a teacher and a mom because I gave 130% to my teaching world and I didn't know how to dial it back. Like I felt like that was the only way to be an effective teacher. So I'm like, I don't want to be gone, but I don't mind having like I've had part-time nannies that would come and just for 4 hours, 4 days a week when my kids were not school aged. Now I have my youngest has a mom that watches her that also has her little kid home that just has one kid home. But for a while I had a nanny that came over and people would be like, well, isn't that the whole reason why you didn't stay teaching English? Just because you wanted to, focus on your kids? I'm like, well, it's only for 4 hours, 4 days a week. So I would have the nanny for 4 hours where I could be dedicated to work. And then I had a 3 hour time period where kids would either be napping or they could have their tablet time. They get like an hour tablet time, or they'd be playing with friends. So I had about 3 hours after those 4 hours where I'd be doing both. Like my office door was open. They knew they could come and talk to me, but I'd still be trying to get as much done as I could while they were independently playing or having their TV time or having their nap time. And then I'd come out of my office and it would be full on. I'm with you guys. I'm focused on you guys until they went to bed. And then after bed, I would do some household chores to get the house where it needed to be. And my husband and I would work together on that.
One final question. Have you ever thought about writing a book of your own? And if so, what are some ideas for books that you will or may write?
So currently, right now, I'm writing not full on books. I'm writing booklets, but they're in depth. I finished writing one, and it's with beta readers right now. It is on self-editing for nonfiction authors, and it walks them through some intensive self-editing they can do with full-on practices and models and checklists for each topic that they could edit their manuscript on. And then I'm writing the fiction one right now. In the future, I plan on writing a full-on book on running an editorial freelance business. It would be kind of like what my course teaches, but now in book form, and it would just take them through all things admin, marketing, financial management, business management. So that's one idea I have. I've also written a booklet that was published for the Editorial Freelancers Association on tracking your metrics and what kind of metrics to track and how to use the data to analyze your business and grow your business. So I have like 3 booklets out there, but not full on books yet.
Katie, you were an insightful guest for this podcast, and I thank you for appearing on the Apollo Papyrus podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.